Hello, impactful ones, and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about some of the ingredients and elements about learning art and how that helped me to run my business more intentionally. Now, this is going to be a more story-based training where most of my stuff is like, these are the concepts, learn the concepts. I'm going to go over a few stories, a few metaphors, and just let me know in the comments if you like this type of video. We'll make more videos like this. And so let's begin. So imagine you're at a restaurant ordering breakfast with your family. You want an omelet. And the server asks you, what kind do you want? Do you want spinach and feta, which is apparently now speta? Ham and cheese, bacon and cheddar, vegetable, plain, cheese, American cheese, etc., right? Or Western, right? And so then you're like, okay, what am I going to choose from this? And then you move on and you think you're done. And she's like, do you want toast with that? And you say, yes. And then she gives you another list: sourdough, white, rye, multigrain, wheat. And then you think you're done with that. And she's like, how do you want that toasted, right? Lightly toasted, dark, right? Like, how do you want this? And then she asks you, do you want butter or jam? Okay, after 2 minutes of this whole ordeal, if you are like me and my family members, you're like, oh my God, how many options were there? That's like insane. I just wanted an omelet, right? And so this process is what happens in business a lot of times, okay? And for some people, it takes a long time to make decisions on each of those steps, right? For others, they know exactly what they want. They get in there, they choose it very, very quickly. And running a business can be like this. I think the biggest difference is that with running an online business, you are not prompted by the waitress. So you don't know what category you're making decisions for. You're trying to make a lot of decisions, but you're not sure how it all fits in to the plate or the bigger picture of the meal you are trying to consume, right? Which in business would mean like the business you're trying to create. And instead, you're often influenced by a lot of different sales messages from well-meaning people who are selling you the next shiny object, right? And the trouble with that is that they may or may not know what it already is on your plate. So you could end up with 3 omelets and no toast, and you weren't on a low carb diet or a gluten-free diet, right? So that is what I think is an issue. And the power, the lesson here is that it is more important to understand how something works together as a whole, because then you can make decisions intentionally about how you are going to create that thing, okay? And so, as I mentioned at the top of this video, this episode is going to be about art. So what does this even have to do with art and running a business? Okay, so in 2020, I took 9 months to focus on my healing. This meant I taught myself art, and I did a ton of art therapy and regular therapy, but for the purpose of this, art therapy. And I noticed that if I had a blank piece of paper, it would be very difficult for me to create. Especially in the beginning, I was afraid to mess up. I was afraid to put something on there that wasn't going to fit with the whole piece. And so, I would start with just pencil to make sure I could erase everything. What happens, right, is that we spend a lot of time trying to get that perfect piece from the get-go with a blank slate in this scenario, right? And my mind would fixate on choosing and thinking that I was making progress in selecting and planning out and penciling in, when really that really wasn't contributing towards creating, okay? And so I would ponder, right? Do I want watercolor? Do I want charcoal? Is this going to be more of a realism piece or abstract? Or am I going to choose a whole other art form? And yet when I constrain to one medium, or maybe a few colors or one type of art. I would just be able to get the work created. Okay. In an online business, when you are bombarded with options and you don't have that waitress guiding you to put together your masterpiece, you are bombarded with options and you are looking all around, wondering, right, if you're doing it right. And it can be deceiving, right? When we're presented with all of these options, it can be deceiving to think that we are making progress, but we're really just selecting options or being swayed by options when we're really not making progress, not in a way that builds our skill, which I think is most important. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. And so really what we're doing is just taking a lot of time to decide something, right? And what I have found over and over with working with clients is that when they learn these core components, like the analogy from the breakfast example, right? They're able to craft a really amazing meal, amazing creation, right? When they are intentional and they understand the components that are going to go into it. So in that example, right, it would be the omelet, the carb and the condiment, right? You wouldn't put, for your condiment, you probably wouldn't put, if you were going to choose between butter and jam, right? And you get one condiment, you're not going to pretty much like put in there mayonnaise, right? Like maybe you would put mayonnaise on toast, but who knows, right? And so when you understand how the ingredients to creating a masterpiece, you can choose intentionally and create something really, really awesome. When you understand how something works, you will understand how each choice in the meal or in the creation, right, affect each other. Or how outside, instead of choosing from outside influences that are saying like, choose the whatever, right? Like your friend's like, I love the feta and spinach one. And you're like, and I hate feta, right? So that is a beautiful thing, because when you understand it, you can decide on purpose what you want and not be swayed by other people's influence. And this also completely eliminates shiny objects because you're clear on what you want. You know the components that you want, and you know what needs to be fulfilled in order to make a creation that is going to work for you. And instead of focusing on making decisions, you get to working on skill acquisition. Now let's talk about constraint for a minute. Once you have chosen what you want from each category, as an entrepreneur, it can be difficult to stick to it because, well, we have a lot of ideas. And I want you to think about this as an artist, right, who is in the middle of creating this beautiful masterpiece, and they're using acrylic paint. And if you've never painted with acrylic, here's the thing about acrylic. Like once you put that down, you're really not getting some other medium on top, especially something like watercolor, because the watercolor has to go directly on the paper to create the magical beauty. Okay. So an entrepreneur might be like already down the line, the acrylic paint is all over the paper, every inch of it. And then they're like, I want watercolor, and they change their mind, right? And so in this situation, right, you have to either finish this piece or start a brand new piece, okay? You're not going to throw watercolor on top. And the beauty of constraint is that you've already decided on acrylic. So you get to ask yourself, what beauty can I create with acrylic, okay? So how this translates to a business is that people have acrylic paint all over their paper, in that maybe they've chosen a social media platform or a type of offer that they're already working on trying to sell. And we're going to use the social media example because I think this most clearly depicts what happens, okay? So they're on Facebook. They're not getting the number of clients they want from Facebook. And they see someone else saying that Instagram is the best thing since sliced bread and they should go be on Instagram. And here's the thing. they never mastered getting clients consistently on Facebook. They never mastered that skill. But now they're going to add on top of that, learning a brand new skill, which is in Instagram. And they still didn't have the core competency, the core skill they needed, which was getting clients. And so now they're doing that spread very thin, right? Because they are now trying to spread their time between two platforms, which if you've looked at either of those two platforms, they have a ton of different outlets, right? You could do Facebook, you could do Facebook ads, you could do Facebook groups, you could do stories on Facebook, you can do all kinds of stuff on Facebook. Okay. And then the same thing goes for Instagram. You could do stories, you could do reels, you could do the post on the feed, you can do IGTV. Like there are so many things to do in Instagram ads, right? Like there are so many parts to that. And because they never mastered the core skill of getting clients consistently, then they are spread thin, deciding between a lot of nuanced things that never builds the skill. I hope that is clear. I'm trying to explain it in different ways to help trigger something in your brain, in your thought process of how you're looking at the decisions you're making. All right. And the trouble is because they didn't, expand or really master that skill. Now they have more to focus on, more to distract themselves with, creating, basically making decisions. And they're not making progress on skill acquisition. Okay. So this leads me to the final lesson that I learned from art. And it is, at the end of the day, the most important thing that you can focus on is skill acquisition. And skill comes from one place and one place only. And that is repetition and practice. You are not born with skill. And in fact, I am like really into art. Like I said, I taught myself art. I really got into it. And my kids were the ones that really introduced me into it because my son starts drawing and he's doing these beautiful drawings. And I have always instilled in them, like, listen, you are getting really, really good at art because you keep practicing. Like if you look at their first piece ever, it was the way that it was because they hadn't practiced. Okay. And so that is how skill acquisition works. And that is a good way to build a growth mindset, right? If you're telling yourself, I can't do art because I'm not an artist or I don't have that skill, or when people say you're so talented, that is a big pet peeve of mine because no one is born that way. You develop that. Okay. And no tool, no platform, no team, no other external thing can replace you having core skills that are meant for entrepreneurs to grow businesses. And the perfect example I have of this is one time I was following this woman in art, right? And she did these beautiful portraits, which are basically drawings of the face and head. And these people look so realistic. And I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. And I was like, I wonder what pen she uses. And I figured out what pen she used and I order it. And I go to do a face portrait and I'm like, yeah, no, like it's not even close to what she was doing. And what I failed to factor in was that she poured like 10 years into the drawing of portraits and therefore she could use anything. And a few weeks later, she actually came out with a video that where she did an entire face portrait with just a Bic pen, which is an ordinary, like those straight ordinary gray pens that you see everywhere that you probably have in your desk somewhere. And I was like, oh, right. The beauty and what comes out as the finished product is actually from the skill, not from the tool. So what are those key skills to develop in an online business? So I have distilled it down to a few. Number one, first and foremost, managing your brain. If you don't know how to manage your brain, if you can't take a hold of reining in your brain, it is going to be very difficult for you to really stay in entrepreneurship, push through, have that growth mindset, overcome obstacles, etc. Okay, managing your brain, number one. Number two, sales. right? You got to learn how to bring in sales and cash into your business, period. Number 3 is copywriting. So writing a message that is communicating either the principles of what you're doing, the idea, and moving people down that sales process, which is different than sales itself. Number 4, coaching. Okay, coaching is a skill. Next one, creating systems. All right. I recently have been looking at investing more, and deciding on purpose how I want my income streams to be and that kind of thing. And so I ran into this model by Robert Kiyosaki, which is like the 4 quadrants of income. And I found that to be really, really interesting. I'm probably going to do a post about it, so keep your eye out about that. But basically, right, he says that running a business is you own systems and you lead people. Okay, that is, in summary, how you make money in a business. You own the system and people work for you in that system. That's kind of how it was more. And so that is like a core function of a business. Okay. Next is managing money, right? If you are making, I don't care how much money you're making, right? If you're making $20,000, $30,000 and it's going out as fast as it's coming in and you're not intentional with that, you are going to always be in that cycle. Okay. And lastly, it's leading a team. All right. So I'm going to review these skills again. Managing your brain, number 1, sales, copywriting, coaching, creating systems, managing money, and leading a team. Now, you can delegate a lot of these skills, and some of you are in the comments might get angry and say, like, but you can just hire a copywriter. Yes, you can. But you want to be a master at these skills, because when you do, you always have the power. These are like the levers, all right, in growing a business. And so you want to have strong enough skills that you can pull on any of these levers whenever you need it. And there is no magical tool or magical person that will fix a problem in one of these systems in your business if you don't know the skill well enough to actually delegate it. Okay. And so taking the approach of just delegating, I find, robs the entrepreneur of acquiring that skill that they desperately need to create business growth. And yes, building skills can take time, but with practice, with dedication, with continually learning and improving and working on it, you are going to be able to skyrocket your business, because like I said, these are the levers. These are the levers. And this creates unlimited income and unlimited business growth. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you're ready to scale up your business, why don't you download the Impact Formula framework, which talks about the core ingredients. Like if you were going to build that omelet, what would you put onto the plate, right? This framework shows you exactly what components would go into that and how to decide them on purpose for your business. So to get that, go to impactdrivenentrepreneur.com/scale-up-strategy, or you can click the link in the description. No matter where you are watching this from, remember that you are capable, you are strong, and you're here to make a difference. So go out there today and do that. Lots of love. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button and the bell to see future videos to help you to grow your business.